Oh, it's not.
Nine.
It's not
Okay.
turning.
Oh, you're not, oh, you're not gonna
I just finished it.
need to revise it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. I see.
What's your key for the RDD? I just said that a little bit earlier.
Um,
Is there a grade?
yeah.
I don't want to disturb you when I leave early. And we're allowed to drop one regardless, so like
Yeah.
if we can just.
All right. So today, we're gonna focus on the problem set 10. So there's no slides or something like that, or data exercise. Although all the materials from last year were loaded for mediation analysis, and then in the extra session slides, you can find the flashcards for the final as well. But for today, we're gonna just focus on the problem set 10, and I'll give you some time to work on the problem sets, questions, and then basically go through the questions. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So let's read the instruction and solve the question 1 first. I'll give you about 8 minutes to work on it. And let's see. Okay. You can either work alone or with your with people you're sitting next with. Are you working on the problem set?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Um, so, oh,
Answer this question first.
oh, yeah, no. So in the deck, set of
Okay, so
oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. I see. Right. So let's say they are. Yeah, I'll draw a part of the deck. Yeah, it's not clear. Sorry about that. The control variables relationship with the p and y are not, is not clear. So let's say we're assuming that one for the control
So
variables.
that all of the controls are
Uh-huh.
counted.
All the set
treated,
of-
and
Yeah, this is all the set of all control variables. Set of all control variables.
and we need to include that in our data.
Oh, what? Oh, yeah,
that should be there.
this should be. Yeah,
So the intervention is the same thing as like you did notice. I'm just confused because the first control for serious and the writ on the like not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not.
It isn't.
So delinquent behavior is more of a not quite they got intervention.
Like they didn't get arrested for it.
Right, yeah.
Okay, oh, nice, yeah.
Do you want a couple of more minutes or? Okay, good. And it's the start of the set, so I'll take my time to work on it. So don't worry about it. Let me know if you have any questions.
5, 6, 7 are talking about a scenario which the other numbers in there as we suggested, or the original scenario. which they're- That's what I did it. So I wasn't sure about that, and then I wasn't sure about this. What the word. But now that's. Okay. Which
Oh. Theoretically, just like there is some so it's about possible, yeah.
So in a scenario, it's all. So in the scenario, which is there's we propose.
Right, this research.
Okay, and so that's it, so we're evaluating that based on the setting action. Not
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not setting it. That was
All right, let's cover the question then. What would be the treatment? Which is anyone?
The adolescent intervention.
Uh-huh. Adolescent intervention from between 16 and 19, right? The ages between 16 and 19. And why would be subsequent billing. Yeah, subsequent billings. Between 21 and 22, which is measured as the criminal record of for selling illegal drugs between the ages of 21 to 22. And the mediator here is employment status. One is employed for pay or not. Between 19 and 21. So to investigate the direct relationship from P to I, you are controlling for N right there. So that's the that's what their argument is about, or that's what they're claiming, what they are claiming, right? But the second question was about what are possible unobserved confounders for the relationship between employment status and delinquency as a young adult, right? So actually, that's the answer to the question of 3. But yeah. So I'll give you 3 minutes to think about what could be the possible unobserved confounders. It should be theoretically judged as one draws a bag.
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna, I thought, I'm gonna say that he probably should be well, it's not. Yeah. Can you see it? Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, I was like, how is this related?
It's not, I was just setting this up and appreciating it. Totally.
It's really, it's a.
Right.
Shouldn't it be nice for this year? Oh, it's nice for lots of. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are
Thank you.
Oh. Okay.
So what could be an example of the unobserved confounders here? Anyone? Yep. College attendance. So how college attendance can affect the employment status between. Do people attend college before 19? Could
You're in college.
I mean, if there are prodigies, that could be. Oh, what? High school graduation? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. High school graduation affect employment status, and high school graduation decrease the subsequent delinquency.
People go to college between 18 and 22.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Yeah. Like, if you skip like some grades, right?
Or you take a gap year between high school and college.
Oh, okay.
Were you doing associate's degree?
Yeah.
We only offer the jobs to people currently in college.
Yeah, we can think of other possibilities. Yeah.
Okay, I have to play my strengths.
Yeah, no.
And that is qualitative storytelling.
Yeah, that's good.
If you're in college, you're less likely to be full-time.
Right. And then it could also affect the why as well, which is the having the criminal record for selling drugs as well.
I'm making a lot of assumptions about kids go to college, not selling drugs, but that's.
Yeah, if you don't have any like time to sell drugs, like that, I don't know.
There's a story you can tell.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Sticking to the college.
But one thing, can you say leisure time would be good? Because if you're a full-time employee and you have less time to like do things.
So it seems like you're suggesting M to U to Y.
Oh.
Yeah, so it should be the other way, right? So the leisure time would be affected by M rather than being the other way. Yeah. So any other options or answers? Yeah.
Parental SES?
Parental SES. Could be, yeah. It could affect the M and Y. Yeah. That is.
Any of the Z could also be unobserved when it comes to the relationship between M1.
Oh, wait, sorry.
So parental poverty was in the Z category.
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
Z-
Poverty is not necessarily income, right?
Okay.
I mean SES. Oh yeah. They could be. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah.
Okay,
that makes
sorry.
sense.
That's a good point. But also, could anything in Z,
Uh-huh.
so you're talking about the Z set of variables having a confounding relationship
Yeah.
between T and Y.
Uh-huh.
Are those unobserved with respect to the relationship between M and Y, or because they're
It
in-
could be, but except that they're observed and controlled in this
Okay, so
situation.
it's
So
not-
it's not like
they're
a big problem. Because, yeah. So it either way, they are controlled. So
the distinction
Doesn't-
between which relationship is confounding is important.
right, it's in this situation. Yes. My example would be actually high school graduation and parental SES would be a great example. My example would be a little bit different. Just another example. It's just another example. It will be in the answer key, so I won't like tell you the answer or whatever. But I would say these are perfectly great answers. If your argument like makes an argument that U affects M and U affects Y as well. Does that make sense? As long as it makes sense, that's fine. Good. Yep.
Oh, so no, I was gesturing about the
Oh.
that.
It's fine.
Yeah, it wasn't a question. I was just using my hands to
Oh, okay, yeah.
process the information.
Sure.
Sorry.
As long as they're both affecting M and Y, they could be confounders between M and Y. Right. So the question 3 answers itself, right? If you draw the DAG right there. And so the question 4 says, if there are such confounders, do you think the authors are right in controlling for employment status to investigate the direct relationship in question? Why or why not? Right? So to investigate this relationship, this causal direct effect, right? You control for M, right? Does that make sense so far? If there are U's, what would happen is
Non-causal
there would be
Yeah.
a spurious relationship between P and U. Because you're controlling for a collider right there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, the authors of this research, this study, are actually assuming that there's no confounders between M and Y, and therefore, as long as you control for M, you can recover or estimate the direct relationship from a direct causal effect from P to Y. But as a reviewer or a person who's reading the research, you can say, oh, if there is U right there that affects both M and Y, this may not be the right, the estimated causal effect is not exactly right. It's biased because it also contains this path as well. Does that make sense? Oh, so to know this path coefficient, to estimate this the direct causal effect from D to Y, you're controlling for M, right? But the thing is, this path and this path will be open, and then it'll be reflected in the beta slope, right? And therefore, you cannot know whether the beta estimate is a result of the true direct effect or this spurious relationship. This one. Does that make sense so far? Uh-huh.
So it's basically asking if we were to control for M,
Mhm.
do we think that the authors would be correct and also controlling for employment status? Or
So-
we're controlling
So
for U?
if the authors would have been correct if there is no confounders between M and Y. But if it could be possible that there's a U or a set of U's that affect M and Y at the same time, or confounders between M and Y, then controlling for M would not give you the correct beta estimate. The slope, the correct slope, basically. Good, yeah. Yeah, you can control for it. That's fine. Yeah, that was question 4. And let's talk about question 5. What are the assumptions for the identification of the controlled direct effect? I'll give you 3 minutes to go to the slides and revisit the assumption needed for the identification of the controlled direct effect. It'll say, in the slides, it'll say, adjustment criteria for CD. And answer the question 6 as well, which is about theoretically judging whether these assumptions are possible in your theoretical judgment.
Yeah.
So like, or the adolescent. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Well, because I was gonna ask them, the number 6 is talking about this. Okay, and because they're academic too.
Yeah, but are you asking questions about 5 and 6?
Yeah, I'm just talking about 6. I wasn't sure if you were talking about that or if you were talking about this one reason.
So, yeah, the original tag. And then from the original tag, you can
Yeah, you would still have.
yeah, judgment with this. Right. Right, yeah. That's a part of. Right. So that's this is that's the validation. Yeah, no.
Me too, but
Do you need more time or you're good or all good? Okay, good. Yeah, so what are the assumptions for the identification of the control directive effect? I'll just, it's in the slides, so I'm just gonna read it. The first one is Z does not include descendants of T. What does it mean? Yep. Yep.
The confounder doesn't, no, well, you're fine. Okay.
Anyone? Yep.
What are the criteria, or what are the assumptions?
Oh, the first one is Z does not include descendants of T.
Does that just mean that, like, any unobserved confounders between T and Y, that treatment is not causing that confounder?
Exactly. So there should be no other. Let's say this is N, for example. There's no like a theoretical reason to call it N, but let's say we have that, right? If so, we cannot say this is the direct causal effect from T to Y. Okay, that's what it means. So descendant, you know what a descendant means, right? Okay, sure. So if T is affecting N, okay, then it means N is a descendant of T. Good. Good. Yeah.
So for this assumption, could you say that there are no confounders between T and Y that originate from T?
Oh,
Or how would
no.
you say
So the first assumption is about there's no mediators. That's all.
between T and Y?
Right. Right. So the second assumption is about there is no confounders between T and Y. Unobserved confounders. That's a different assumption. It's about here.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm just struggling to put this assumption into words, like a legal statement.
The first assumption or the second
The
one?
first one.
The first one. So I'll give you an example. So let's say we have T, an adolescent intervention between 16 and 19, right? And this could be employment status, and N could be delinquency between 19 and 21. Does that make sense? So it means that we don't observe that here. What we observe here, the treatment effect, adolescent intervention between 16 and 19, right? And the outcome is subsequent delinquency from between 21 and 22. So what could happen here is between the two periods, you don't know what's going on, which means that you don't have any observed variables between the two periods. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if N here is delinquency between 19 and 21, and that affects Y, and that means it's violating the assumption of the first assumption. If that makes sense. Yeah. No. So there is no unobserved mediators. That's what it means.
So we can only have one.
No, that's not what I mean. So this should be unobserved. This should, if you are interested in estimating the direct effect from T to Y, when there are two mediators, you are able to identify the direct effect if you control for M and N, both of them. But if you don't have N in your data, it's not observed, right? And therefore, you cannot identify this path's coefficient because you would have that one as well in your regression results. Good? Does that make sense? Sort of. That's the first assumption. That's the first assumption. What about the second one? Second one means Z and M block all backdoor paths between T and Y, meaning that there's no other U2s for example. There's no unobserved confounders between T and Y that are not controlled. Here, Z's are all observed, right? They can be controlled away, right? But U2s are not observed, therefore they cannot be controlled. If so, you cannot identify CDE.
So it says Z and M block all backdoor passes. So when we condition both on a given set of Z's and on M,
Mhm.
we eliminate all that.
Right. So let's say you can observe this one as well, right? So then if you control for it, then you can identify the direct effect right there.
So like in this case, so.
Good.
Actually, wait, I guess this is question 6, so.
Okay, sure. Oh yeah. So an example, what would be an example of that? What would be an example of that? Oh, that's adjustment criteria. So it says the CDEs are identifiable by adjusting for a set of variables Z if blah 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 blah. But if you don't control for it, then you cannot identify the CDE, right? And some variables are not observable, therefore they're not controlled. But what? Yeah. No, they're not saying because you're applying the principle right there in the slides into the question. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Oh, you can theoretically judge like, if there's other N or other U2s or something. Yeah. Right, but if we do have it that is not observed, then it means it's not identified. Good. So it means that CDEs are identified if these conditions are met. But if any of these conditions are not met, it's not met, then it means the CD is not identified. Backdoor path means confounders, basically. All right. Let's say we have this this unobserved variable L. Right. And L could be what could be an example of that? Anyone?
I'm thinking about like a very basic demographic variable, like race and gender.
Okay, so race is controlled, right? But gender is not controlled, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, gender is not controlled,
Mhm.
right? Gender can be a confounder between the two. Probably. Good. Does that make sense? Gender, women, younger women are less likely to experience adolescent intervention between 16 and 19, and Y also subsequent delinquency between 21 and 22. Does that make sense, or am I making any sense? Okay, sure. Gender can be an example of the violation of the second assumption, which is there is no unobserved confounders between T and Y. Okay. That's the second assumption. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. And we don't have gender in the data, so it's unobserved. T, women can be less likely to be intervene between 16 and 19. Right. Oh, what? Sure. All right, good. Let's talk about the third assumption. There's no confounders between M and Y. We talked about this already, right? U can be an example of the violation of the third assumption. Okay, I'll just put it there. But U can be a violation of the M and Y's confounder, right? Again, the third assumption means no confounders between M and Y, but if there's a U right there that is not observed, then you would have the CD is not identified. By running the regression of Y on T while controlling for Z and M, you cannot have the correct coefficient. Any questions? Do you think it's just too hard, or? There's a lot of notations in this slide, but that's why these are all. So and then for the seventh problem, what additional assumption is needed to identify the natural direct effect? As you can see from the slide 24, you have one more criteria. or condition for the adjustment criteria, which is Z blocks all backdoor paths between P and N. So now you have to assume that there is no confounders between P and N. But if there is a V right there that confounds the relationship between P and N, then the NDE is not identified. You have one more assumption.
So then logically.
Huh?
So then logically, if we can't identify CDE, we can't identify NDE. Because it has all of those assumptions plus an condition.
I would say yeah. If you cannot identify NDE. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Exactly. So
Okay.
if you cannot identify CDE, then any of these three assumptions is violated, and therefore that means the assumptions for NDE is violated. So what? So it really depends on your theoretical interest. So if your question asks the CDE, then you have to care about the CDE assumptions. And if your question is really about the NDE, then you have to think about all these four assumptions. Good. So what could be an example of V? Yep.
Is it like the neighborhood?
Neighborhood. Okay. Neighborhoods. What characteristics would be?
I don't know, but I'm thinking that if you live in a particular neighborhood that's maybe like segregated where there's already high crime,
Mhm.
would impact whether or not like there's an official information when you're young, and then whether or not you're able to be employed.
Right. Okay. High crime neighborhood, and that affects employment status,
And intervention.
and intervention at the same time. Yeah, I mean, you have to have. I guess you have to have more stronger theory to back up this assumption, but if that makes sense, yes, yes.
Does it matter the example V
Uh-huh.
also affect Y at the same time?
Yeah, it could be actually like this way.
Yeah.
So it would violate the third and fourth assumption.
Okay.
So yeah,
Can it be the peer groups?
peer
Yeah,
groups, peer pressure.
Yeah.
Or
Something like
somehow, yeah, sure, it could be. It could be peer pressure to yeah, I mean, you could come up with a story, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Any questions?
So
Well,
would this,
sorry. Reviews. Sorry.
would this help answer question 8, like thinking about confounders that would impact T and N to decide whether or not the assumption is met?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So yeah, so if there's V that is not observed, then this yeah.
Okay.
Oh what? L could be L is a confounder between T and Y. Its gender could affect T and Y. All right. Good. So actually in the printed in you don't have the answer to the problem. So that's fine. Anyway, so any questions about the problem set 10?
So just to clarify, number 6 and 8, when you're saying evaluate, because I know I asked you this question before, but now let me see what it's all asking.
Yeah, sure.
When you say evaluate whether these assumptions are met,
Uh-huh.
or would be asking, or what you're asking for,
Is
under which conditions that we've already discussed would these be met or not met with respect to the thing that we've talked about, like to this specific example?
yeah, so basically with specific examples, you can explain why the first assumption could be violated, the second assumption could go wrong, or the third assumption.
Hypothetically based on anything that we've talked about.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but like hypotheticals.
Yeah, like if the theory says that one, then it could be violated. This first assumption could be violated, the second assumption.
Because we haven't even introduced, previous to this, we hadn't even introduced the idea of B in this particular example. But you're saying we should be, in like 8, for instance, we should be discussing possible weakness.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Because how would any of these be violated? All right, in this example.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as a reviewer, like
Hypothetically, if you were a reviewer.
yeah, if you're a reviewer,
If one were
right now, if you were a reviewer, then like you could this could be a confounder, so you should be really careful about making causal claims or put that as a limitation. That kind of stuff. Yeah. Any questions? Nope. All right, I do. Sure, I can explain that. So, let's get technical a little bit. And then, let's get the. All right. So, that was all about the problem set 10. I can answer some more general questions about mediation analysis now. So, CDE, T asterisk, T M, and Y T M, and Y T asterisk M. Right? What does that mean? What does that mean? Anybody here to explain what's going on there? Yep.
The difference between the outcome with the treatment
Uh-huh.
and a mediator set at a specific value
Uh-huh.
and the counterfactual with the mediator set.
Exactly. So yeah, y would be y. YTM means the potential outcome of y when p is p and m is m. They're said to be t and m is said to be m, whatever the values are. Okay. And y, t asterisk, m means they're same, but with t asterisk and m. For the sake of simplicity, let's think that t asterisk means 0 and t means 1. Meaning that this is t is 0, meaning that it's controlled. And it's treated. Does that make sense so far? So the potential outcome of y when t is 1 compared to when t is 0. When n is set to the fixed number n. Great.
That part is a little bit confusing me. Like
Uh-huh.
the fixing m, if the m has like 5 different values,
Uh-huh.
and the CDE kind of average of 5 different potential outcomes.
Not really. So this part is there
Mhm.
because CD can be changing depending on M. So if there's no interaction between treatment and the mediator, it's not needed.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? But if there is an interaction between T and M, having that matters. Because the causal effect can be changing depending on the level of M. That's what interaction between T and M means. Does that make sense so far? All right. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any questions, or do you want me to move on to ND and I can do that. All right. So I can erase it, right? Yep. NDE all right. what does that mean? What would that mean? Anybody care to explain? What is the this part?
Take a stab at it, that's for sure.
Sure.
Well, the first one, so that would be, so this is what the mediator value would be, in the treatment group. If they have like the natural mediator that they would have, if they were in the control group, that the first one is. And then the second one would be the outcome that they would have if they were in the control group, when they had the natural mediator value.
Yes, exactly. So M as T asterisk, it means that what would be the mediators level if T was 0. For the sake of simplicity, we assume that T asterisk is 0, right? What would be the M's value when T is exactly 0? Does that make sense? Yeah. And what you're comparing is YT minus YT asterisk. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So, what does that lead to? So MBE is basically it's about think about the counterfactual situation, what the M value would be when T is 0. Right? And then we'll get the effect, and then you have the direct effect right there. When M is fixed to the level of M when it is T is exactly 0. Okay. Seems complicated, right? So this is a counterfactual level. Okay. And you don't observe that. And that's why it's complicated.
But why do we set it to the control situation?
Huh?
Like, set it to the control situation, like T star. Rather than T. And, for instance,
This one?
Yeah.
Why this is not T?
and both.
Both? Oh. It could be, but the causal effect will be exactly the inverse of that sign. Does that? So Um, so that's the reason why we have that. If we don't have that asterisk in both of these signs, then you are starting from T to T asterisk. You are going from control group to treatment, control group, going from treatment group to control group. You're going 1 to 0 and see the effect of that. Does that make sense? Right. Yeah. So exactly, the sign is inverse. The causal effect signs inverse. Good. Yeah. Right. All right. So what does that mean? So if T is 0, when there is no interaction between T and M, right? Everybody would have the predicted value. Meaning that T is T asterisk, right? It's 0. In our, for the sake of simplicity, again, it's 0. And M would be the level of M when T is 0. Right? Okay. It can be different across people. That's what natural direct effect or natural indirect effect suggests. Does that make sense? So in the control CDE, right? Both of them are controlling M, right? Right. But M is fixed to a number. So there is no indirect effect now. So CI is E is not defined. That's why. Because it's set fixed to a number. Number doesn't have to have covariance with each other, with other variables, right? That's why CIE is not defined in the first place. But here in the E, it's a fixed, but it's not exactly, so it's not fixed in the control, in the CDE sense. Meaning that you're allowing the possibility that M could be different across people when T is 0. So meaning that there is an interaction between T and M. On Y. Yeah, there's synonyms actually. Does that make sense? It is difficult. It is really difficult. I have to say that. That's why like all these published articles are at least after 2015. Not all, but it's really recent. Most of them are really recent actually. So it's more of a recent developments are focused. But I don't necessarily focus on this area, but yeah, some people are focusing on it. Good. Yeah.
So just to clarify that first, which one is the counterfactual again? It's the one where it's T and then
Oh, so this part is counterfactual, right? Or unobserved. These part are all unobserved.
Oh, so it's not just one side of the equation or the other, it's the.
Right. This part is also unobserved, right? In real research, you would observe T or T asterisk, YT or YT asterisk part, right? But only one of them, right? But for this part, you would not observe that in both of these terms. So that's what makes this one tricky. But if this person is a treated person, that would be a counterfactual. They are both counterfactual because YT part is observed, right? But this part is MT asterisk. This part is counterfactual or unobserved. You don't really observe that. Oh, what? Yeah, so, but you know T is 1, but you are looking at the mediator's level when T asterisk is 0. So that's why you cannot observe them. Did you all get that? So let's say we observe the treatment group, right? But you are looking at the mediator's level when T asterisk is 0. So that's why you cannot, it's also counterfactual. They're both counterfactuals. Good. Any questions? Nope. All right. It's complicated, I know that. Yeah. But let me know if you have any questions. And I personally think that I should not say a lot of these things, but as long as you can solve the problem set questions, I think you will do fine on the final. So yeah, don't be scared too much about this mediation analysis. So that's my suggestion. But good now. Okay, all right. Good luck on the exam.